All right. I just wanted to start today by recommending Carlos's book, The Purity Fetish: The Crisis of Western Marxism. This is a terrific book. It's succinct, it's short, it's to the point, it's informative, and it gives us a great lens into one of the major problems in revolutionary politics in the West today. Now, if you're a leftist, there's basically two paths you can go down. The purity fetish left that spends most of its time attacking the opponents of imperialism, or the aligned anti-imperialist struggle and the forces of multipolarity. Now, I suggest you do the latter, because the latter is focused on substantive changes and actually makes a dialectical argument from the basis of a historical worldview. Simply put, we're Marxists. That's what we are. But it's important for us to assess the purity fetish self proclaimed left and their characteristics to be able to identify them and fight them effectively. Now, these are the people that are obsessed with the aesthetic of oppressed people, but aren't concerned with the substance of their struggles. These are the types of people with the characteristics like sharing photos of Malcolm X or Fred Hampton, commemorating the dates of important revolutionary struggles, but doing little to no analysis of how these struggles actually came to be, the origins and impacts of these movements on the wider international struggle for socialism and world progressive revolution. And what you'll notice about many of these people after time, because I have been assessing them for quite some time, is that these people also spend a disproportionate amount of time attacking the opponents of imperialism as compared to actually attacking the forces of unipolarity and the capitalist West themselves, the very people that have spent centuries enslaving and oppressing the peoples of the world. And these leftists will identify impurities of form or latch on to irrelevant grievances from the past to undermine current struggles. One of the examples of this that I found disgusting was the reactions to Iran and the death of President Raisi. We've seen leftists and people who hold themselves out as communists denounce Raisi as a butcher, cruel, authoritarian, take your pick. And these are people who also ostensibly support Palestine. But in doing this, they alienate and attack the primary basis of the actual Palestinian resistance as it exists in history, which are Iran and their allies. Now, these leftists sometimes will shockingly get thousands of likes on these posts. But who's liking and boosting these posts? Well, a lot of times it's the Zionists themselves, supporters of NATO, NAFO Doge memes, which I can't stand, who are the literal running dogs for imperialism, along with the usual cohort of young, woke illiterates who think of themselves as an incarnation of Lenin, but are actually just Westoid idealists and hyper-individualists looking to live out some type of fantasy. It's deranged. And you'll see this in the kinds of activities these wreckers promote. They like the type of direct action that will be the most widely scorned and reviled by the masses of working people. The chaos and riots with no comprehensible goal or strategy, like anarchists storming private businesses or attacking regular working people, who may indeed be politically reactionary, but these deranged stunts make the reactionaries look more sympathetic and reasonable to the broad masses in comparison. These are also the types that condemn multipolarity, which is the geopolitical basis for socialist revolution. Now, I already mentioned Iran, but these illiterates will also bash Russia and China more than they do the United States. And they love to cherry pick and incorrectly cite and misapply quotes from Lenin. For example, they'll compare the current struggle of multipolarity to the inter-imperialist conflict in World War I. But the two couldn't be more different, and they would know that if they picked up a book or even thought about history critically for a few minutes. World War I was between the colonial powers of Germany, France, and Britain. It was, yes, an inter-imperialist conflict, but it was within the context of unipolarity, an Angloid and European unipolarity that had been pushed upon the entire world. Because these were all the primary authorities for centuries of colonialism. And these are the ones that had extra European colonies who literally agreed between themselves on the division of the entire African continent 30 years before. These are the interests and the inheritors of hundreds of years of global European colonialism. But compare that to the struggle of multipolarity, where you have the historical champions of anti-imperialism, none of which hold colonies outside of their zone of organic civil society, and who are in fact, like in the case of China, the main subjects of imperialist conquest and global hegemony, the victims of Anglo-European unipolarity and enslavement. Because China has no colonies on the other side of the world, nor does Iran or Russia. And each of these countries has seen revolutions themselves in the past century to reclaim their sovereignty from these very same unipolar powers that are trying to maintain control today. So, to compare these countries to the monarchs and dynastic rulers of European colonialism on the eve of World War I is just historically illiterate. And I wonder if it's even bad faith, the work of US intelligence or Mossad and other fascistic European authorities that can dupe American Westoids. Because these leftists will promote every cause to destabilize the Eastern civilizations of the world and deepen the control of Western imperialists. Whether it's promoting the weird and fringe ultra-Maoists in China, the Muslim fundamentalist separatists in Western China, the neo-Nazis in Ukraine who terrorize the civilians of the Donbass and attack Russia, the Kurdish separatists in Iran, or the monarchists who look for the return of the Shah in Iran, or even the fundamentalists like ISIS in the Middle East, who cause chaos and create vacuums, which the US undoubtedly fills. And a lot of these people champion Lenin, which is one of the things that I despise the most. Because Lenin would have despised these individuals too. He literally wrote a whole book on them called Left Communism, an infantile disorder, where he assessed the German left, because the German left at that time, like the left is today, was arguing that it was pointless and wrong for revolutionaries to collaborate with social chauvinists and counter-revolutionary trade unions. They believed that there was no use in engaging with anyone who was an extreme left as they were. But Lenin saw this as counterproductive. He saw this as a form of left-wing communism because it involved taking an excessively radical left position, and it was considered infantile because it meant isolating themselves from the majority of the working people. But in our eyes, as it was in Lenin's eyes back then, is that it is the revolutionary's job to not alienate, but to connect with and stay connected to the masses of the working class, not use extreme leftist rhetoric to create a barrier between our party and the class.